Guard Brigade occupied the streets of Elko in early May as a combined group of soldiers from Arizona, Idaho, and Nevada returned from a training mission with the Canadian National Guard. While in Elko and on a city street adjacent to Elko's high school and National Guard armory, troops could be seen carrying loaded automatic weapons and had a group of trained canines along for the ride. The training, which took place in northern Idaho, included infantry and light armored units from both countries and was reportedly centered in an area known to hold future internment camps for FEMA's Region 10. Lieutenant Michael Milner of the Arizona National Guard had this to say about his company's mission during the exercise.
We're doing a consolidated effort with the Canadian National Guard. We're a logistical support unit, so we set up a talk and we provide logistical support, and they brought down their infantry and their artillery unit.
Regardless of Milner's seemingly tame assertion of field training with the Canadian Army, the combination of U.S. and foreign troops on American soil has been more common of late and could signal dangerous times to come for citizens and believers in liberty. Reporting from Elko, Nevada, I'm Greg Knight.
We'd like to thank Greg Knight for this special report. Also this week, Canadian and American troops trained together at an Army base in Idaho. About 700 members of the Canadian Army Reserve's 39 Brigade Group and the Arizona Army National Guard trained on tactics, techniques, and procedures at the Idaho National Guard's Orchard Combat Training Center. Canada now is a part of the NATO coalition in Afghanistan, and the press is stressing that the exercise known as Cougar Salvo 2012 is simply just to give the Canadian and American troops the opportunity to train in conditions similar to those they could face overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan. However, earlier this year, video surfaced online of Canadian troops blowing up a house of an Afghan villager only to entertain themselves.
Zero. That was the badass. That's beautiful.
Obviously, there's great concern about the unusually high number of stories about troops training on American soil, both American and those foreign. But also, the Department of Homeland Security and USDA have combined, between them two, purchased an estimated 750 million rounds of ammunition, what some analysts say is enough ammunition to fight a war for 7 years. But going back to Idaho and all the strange things happening there, it was revealed several years ago that the Air Force of Singapore is being trained at Mountain Home Air Force Base. In reference to that, Secretary of the Air Force Michael Donnelly says, quote, "This is the latest step in a long and fruitful relationship between the two militaries." Here's that video.
Singapore's F-15s have been streaking across the skies of Idaho as RSAF pilots undergo air-to-air and air-to-ground training. They are the most advanced Strike Eagle fighter jets, and Singapore has ordered 24 from the US military. The formal inauguration at the Mountain Home Air Force Base signifies the partnership between the two countries, which will span at least another 25 years as the RSAF continues to train there.
The U.S. has been a stabilizing force for many decades in our region. The U.S. is a very strong economic partner for all of us, and the U.S. itself is a Pacific power. So we believe that in a time of change and uncertainties in the Asia-Pacific, that a continued U.S. presence will be very important to maintaining the stability, peace and security in our region.
Having an F-15 detachment here provides for mutual training and interoperability opportunities. We have always valued the strategic partnership with Singapore in Asia, and this is just another expression of that mutual commitment to interoperability in the Pacific.
For the 250 Singaporeans and their families, it has also been a mutual learning experience as they adapt to a new culture and home.
Also, the Idaho Statesman reported on a story in late 2010 on a proposal to lease 50 square miles to a Chinese company that enjoys close ties to the Chinese government. They're known as the Sinomac Corporation. More on this later. These are just snapshots of some of the big moves being made in our country involving foreign governments and troops with the approval of our government and the participation of some of our troops. Going back to the Canadian troops training in the United States, they've also trained recently on a military base in the state of Indiana. I'm reading from the National Guard's press release right now, and this is their video from their very own YouTube channel. So this is obviously not a secret. Between March 8th and the 25th of this year, over 250 Canadian soldiers of the 31st Brigade, Canadian Brigade group out of Ontario, Canada, were immersed in a realistic urban warfare scenario during the Arrowhead Lightning exercise held at Muscatuck Urban Training Complex in Butterville, Indiana. These drills are really seek and destroy missions for accused, labeled enemy combatants, possibly in America, as the details of the drill show. Upon arrival, the soldiers immediately took to the task of training with Muscatuck's Wolf Operations Battalion in urban warfare, using facilities at Atterbury to include a live fire drill in several small urban complexes. After training at Camp Atterbury, the soldiers moved south to Muscatuck. The training there began at 4 a.m., and the Canadian soldiers flew in on helicopters and had to navigate through wooded terrain under rain and darkness to an objective where simulated enemies had taken a foothold in two large adjacent buildings. Soldiers had to gain fire superiority by setting up machine gun positions in a parking lot next to the two buildings and provide cover fire for their comrades as they infiltrated the building. Why is Waco coming to mind? Practicing explosive breaching techniques they had just learned at Atterbury the week before. After finishing searching the building, for God knows who and God knows why, they found out that many of the enemies had escaped to the second building via an underground tunnel connecting the two. Soldiers were forced to close the tunnel and start all over again, infiltrating yet another large building and searching room to room for the enemies. The battle went on for several hours. Camp Atterbury Joint Maneuver Training Center has the reputation of a premier training facility and mobilization troops stationed for American troops, and it's also become world-renowned as a training site for military, civilian, and police forces. Last summer's multinational NATO-led Bold Quest exercise hosted a whole number of countries, well over a dozen, and I noted the significance of the drill last year. Foreign troops from 13 NATO countries were recently stationed in Indiana at Camp Atterbury. The 750 men from around the world took part in a joint forces exercise called Operation Bold Quest. Camp Atterbury's website says Bold Quest 2011 is yet another example of NATO countries coming together to work as one.
On the airfield at Camp Atterbury sit giant cargo planes, not American C-130s. Instead, one plane from Italy, two from Germany. Inside, NATO combat identification training is underway.
It's especially important to test it in an international environment because we need to be interoperable.
These computer systems were taken from German jet fighters. Pilots want to know how well they work when it comes to identifying friendly forces from other countries who are on the ground.
We need to have one system that's working for all the troops. And to test this up here is really, really important before we can field it in theater.
One of the goals of Operation Bold Quest is to cut down and eliminate fratricide in combat zones. This is the first time NATO troops have ever trained at Camp Atterbury.
Russia is sending troops to the United States to learn American military tactics. Red Dawn, Red Dawn, Red Dawn. It's no longer a movie. Russian troops are coming to the United States to train on our soil. Now, you wouldn't think that Russian and NATO countries would be working together, training on the same soil, but they are. And in a future episode, I'll be going over a detailed breakdown of all the facts concerning this very bizarre drill that most Americans don't even know is taking place. Plus, there's also breaking news that a Michigan town near Ohio could become a